For over 100 years, the United States government waged a war against a single tree. Ranchers called it the green cancer. The Department of Agriculture declared it a pest. They bombed it with chemicals, burned it with diesel, and ripped it out of the ground with massive steel chains. They spent millions of dollars trying to erase it from the map. But they failed. They didn't understand that the enemy they were fighting was actually the oldest guardian of the desert. They didn't know it creates its own water, or that it had fed civilizations for 4,000 years before we arrived. The tree we tried to murder is now the very thing that might save us from a hotter, drier future. This is the story of the mesquite. Welcome to the archives of Veiled Earth. The evidence of its power begins with a resurrection. The year is 1998, inside a cave near Tucson, Arizona. Archaeologists uncovered a cache of clay jars sealed in the darkness for nearly 4,000 years. The people who placed them there had no written alphabet. They built no stone temples that scraped the sky. But they possessed a knowledge we are only just beginning to relearn. Inside the jars were seeds, small, brown, unassuming beans. When scientists took these seeds back to the lab and planted them, they didn't decompose. They grew. After 40 centuries of dormancy, the life force within them was still intact. This longevity is not an accident. It is an evolutionary masterpiece. To truly understand this tree, you must go back before humans walked this continent. The mesquite, known scientifically as Prosopis, co-evolved with the megafauna of the Pleistocene era. Giant ground sloths, the size of modern elephants, and wandering mastodons once feasted on its sweet pods, carrying the seeds in their guts across the prehistoric landscape. When the Ice Age ended and the giants died out, the tree was left orphaned in a drying world. By all laws of nature, it should have gone extinct. Instead, it adapted. It decided to go down. A single mesquite tree is merely the tip of an iceberg. While an oak tree spreads wide, the mesquite drills. Its taproot is a geological probe capable of piercing 160 feet, sometimes nearly 200 feet, through solid earth to find the water table. While the cactus hoards water in its flesh, guarding it with thorns, the mesquite acts as a hydraulic pump. Through a phenomenon known as hydraulic redistribution, the tree lifts gallons of water from the deep aquifer during the night, releasing it into the shallow soil to drink during the day. It literally waters itself. For the indigenous peoples of the Southwest, the Tohono O'odham, the Pima, the Yoeme, the Seri, this tree was not just a plant. It was a relative. It was the Quiche, the tree of life. In 1535, the Spanish explorer Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca wandered lost across the American Southwest. Starving and desperate, he encountered communities that thrived in the desolation. He wrote of people who ate a powder of straw that tasted of honey. He was tasting mesquite flower. The fruit of the mesquite is a marvel of bioengineering. It looks like a green bean, but it tastes like carob, molasses, and hazelnut. Unlike most desert plants, which are bitter with toxins to deter predators, the mesquite wants to be eaten. Each pod is a nutritional powerhouse. It is 35% sucrose, but bound in a matrix of soluble fibers and galactomannan gums. It contains lysine, a vital amino acid almost non-existent in other vegetable crops. It provided calcium, magnesium, and zinc. In the blistering months of June and July, before the monsoons arrived, the pods fell like golden rain. Families would gather thousands of pounds, grinding them in stone matats. The resulting flour was virtually indestructible. It didn't spoil. It didn't mold. It was the ultimate survival ration. By 1541, explorers recorded mesquite forests, known as bosques, stretching for miles across the river valleys. These were not scrub bushes. These were cathedral forests, with canopies so dense they created their own microclimates, dropping temperatures by 15 degrees. The mesquite gave shade. It gave food. It gave medicine, with its black gum dissolved in water to treat eye infections and stomach ailments. It asked for nothing but the sun. But to a new wave of settlers, it wasn't a miracle. It was a monster. By the late 19th century, the mandate of the American West had changed. The goal was no longer survival. It was extraction. Ranchers arrived with millions of cattle, hungry for grass. They looked at the mesquite and saw only a thief. They believed the deep roots of the tree were stealing water from their grass. They believed the thorns were injuring their livestock. They called it the green cancer. The war began in earnest. It was an ecological extermination campaign unrivaled in history. Millions of acres were targeted. They used diesel fuel to burn the stumps. They used massive steel chains dragged between bulldozers to rip the forests from the earth. But the ranchers made a fatal miscalculation. They didn't understand the biology of their enemy. Mesquite has a fail-safe mechanism. Located just below the soil surface is the root crown, a bank of dormant buds waiting for trauma. When you cut a mesquite tree down, it doesn't die. It gets angry. For every single trunk the ranchers severed, 10 new shoots erupted from the base. The majestic single-trunk trees were replaced by impenetrable, multi-stemmed thickets. The more they fought it, the denser it grew. Desperate, the government turned to chemical warfare. In the mid-20th century, herbicides like 2,4,5-T, a component of the infamous Agent Orange, were sprayed over the American Southwest. They poisoned the land to kill the tree. In 1948, after decades of destruction, the USDA quietly admitted a horrifying truth. The eradication programs were a failure. The mesquite could not be killed. But the autod's damage was already done. The ranchers had won the battle, but lost the war. Without the mesquite to hold the soil, the ground cracked. Without the shade, the grass burned. The cattle, which the ranchers had tried to protect, began to starve. The land, stripped of its ancient protector, turned to dust and blew away in the wind. It took 50 years for science to catch up with what the desert already knew. In the 1970s, ecologists began to look closer at the weed they had demonized. They found that the mesquite wasn't the villain. It was the nurse. Mesquite is a legume. Like beans and peas, it possesses a superpower called nitrogen fixation. In the soil, bacteria called rhizobia colonize the mesquite's roots. In exchange for sugar from the tree, these bacteria pull nitrogen gas from the air and convert it into fertilizer. The mesquite was literally feeding the soil. Wherever a mesquite stood, the soil was richer, softer, and cooler. Scientists call them nurse trees. The iconic saguaro cactus often cannot survive its infancy without growing under the protective arm of a mesquite. The tree supports a galaxy of life. Over 60 species of native bees rely on its pollen. Quail, deer, javina, and coyotes rely on the pods. In the brutal architecture of the desert, the mesquite is the keystone. Pull it out, and the arch collapses. While the ecological war raged in the desert, a biological war was breaking out in the human body. By the year 2000, global sugar consumption had crossed 170 million tons a year. Type 2 diabetes was becoming a global pandemic, particularly ravaging the very indigenous communities who had once relied on mesquite. Modern medicine began searching for a solution. They needed a sugar that fueled the body without destroying it. Paradoxically, the answer was hiding in the weed they had tried to poison. In 2005, studies at the University of Arizona confirmed the chemical profile of mesquite pods. They discovered that the sweetness comes from fructose, which requires no insulin to be processed. But the real secret was the galactomannan gum. This soluble fiber forms a gel in the stomach, slowing down digestion and absorption. A teaspoon of mesquite flour in your coffee creates a steady burn of energy, not a crash. It has a glycemic index of just 25, half that of table sugar. One researcher noted the irony, stating that we spent millions trying to destroy the one plant that could treat the disease caused by our modern diet. Suddenly, the pest became a premium product. By 2010, health food stores were selling mesquite flour for $20 a pound. Chefs in Santa Fe and Tucson began using it for its complex flavor profile, notes of cinnamon, mocha, and smoke. The trash tree had become a superfood, but the true revival of mesquite isn't happening in high-end grocery stores. It is happening in the dry washes and the backyards of the desert. Starting around 2012, a movement began to stir. Led by organizations like the San Xavier Co-op Farm and Desert Harvesters, communities began to reclaim the harvest. They called it eating the neighborhood. They revived the ancient millings, where neighbors bring their gathered pods to be ground by community hammer mills. They shared recipes for atole, a warm, sweet porridge. They taught the youth how to identify the sweetest trees, as not all mesquites are created equal. Some taste like chalk, others taste like caramel candy. A Tohono O'odham farmer, returning to the traditional ways, said it best. When we eat the food of our ancestors, we remember who we are. The tree never left us. We left the tree. Today, the stakes are higher than ever. The deserts are growing. Climate change is pushing the arid zones of the world further north and south. Wheat fails. Corn dies. Water becomes more precious than gold. In this terrifying new reality, the mesquite offers a blueprint for survival. From the Algarrobo forests of Argentina to the Prosopis juliflora thickets in Kenya and India, this genus is being reconsidered. In the United Arab Emirates, the ghaff tree, a close cousin of the mesquite, is the national tree, protected by law, revered for its ability to stay green in the Rub al Khali dunes. NASA and agricultural scientists are now studying mesquite for what is known as dryland agroforestry. It is a crop that requires zero irrigation, zero fertilizer, and zero pesticides. It produces food, timber, medicine, and soil fertility simultaneously. It is the ultimate permaculture engine. We called it a weed because we didn't understand its worth. We called it a pest because it was stronger than our plows. But the mesquite played the long game. It waited for the water to run out. It waited for us to get sick on our own artificial sweetness. It waited for us to need it again. The mesquite teaches us a difficult lesson. In the fight against nature, you will always lose. But if you surrender, if you listen to the soil, you might just find a way to live. The answers to our future aren't always found in a laboratory. Sometimes they are buried in a clay jar, waiting in the dark for 4,000 years. The earth has many secrets left to tell. We just have to be willing to listen. This is veiled earth. We peel back the layers of the forgotten world to find the wisdom we left behind. If this story took root in your mind, help us grow. Hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to keep the archive open. Beneath our feet, there are a million more stories waiting to be told.